Good afternoon, Dr. Misahin, and welcome to our seminar presentation on a published research article. This seminar will be taken by me, Beka Gemeta, and Albano Metin, and I will be starting off with a summary of the article, critical analysis of the literature review, discussion, conclusion, and the bibliography, and my colleague will be talking on the theoretical framework and critical analysis of the methodology and findings. The article that we chose is titled Biology Teachers' Attitudes and Communication Behavior in Turkey from the Viewpoint of Their Students. And the authors are Feyzi, Osman Pekel, Yavuz Timur, and Mehmet Gildiz, published in 2006 and sourced from the Turkish Online Journal of Educational Technology, Volume 5, Issue 1, Article 3. The study focused mainly on the perceptions of grades 9, 10, and 11 biology students about their biology teachers' attitudes and communication behavior in the classroom environment. And it was carried out mainly at selected high schools in the city of Erzurum in eastern Turkey. We analyzed the article from the beginning to the end, and we came up with the following. There were contradictions in the format of the write-up. For example, the aims and objectives of the study were not written as expected in a research report, but were rather only integrated into the abstract, theoretical framework, and the discussion. The research questions were also very unclear. There was no conclusion. There were many grammatical errors in the write-up which made for incoherent understanding of some text. Take, for example, the research question, which we believed was written as such in the excerpt given: how do biology students' perceptions of their biology teacher, biology lessons, biology examination system? That was the research question, but we believe it was incoherently written. There were gaps in the literature review. The participation selection was also questionable. There was no mention of how the data was analyzed, and some of the literature were quite backdated, more than 15 years back. For the aims and objectives of the article, there were no clearly defined aims or objectives stated in the article. There were statements which we presumed to be aims, but these were integrated elsewhere in the report. For example, the purpose of the study was indicated in the abstract as being to determine students' perceptions about their biology teachers' attitudes and communication behaviors in classroom environment in Turkey. We presumed that that was the name of the study. Another statement in the second paragraph of the discussion led us to presume another aim of the study, and it read, to provide a discussion frame of communication-related problems in order to improve the subject knowledge and teacher training programs. And that was taken from that excerpt there, which we have included. In the last paragraph of the theoretical framework, there was also another aim, which we believe was another aim, and it stated to investigate associations between students' perceptions of their learning environment and students' attitudinal outcomes. And we have included an excerpt there, which was included in the theoretical framework. The research questions were not stated separately as expected in a research report. However, the instrument used in the methodology, which was a 5-point Likert attitude scale, was used to answer the following question. How do biology students' perceptions of their biology teacher, biology lessons, biology examination system? We presume the above to be the research question, though we believe it should have been written as such so that it could be more coherent. How do biology students perceive of their biology teacher, biology lessons, biology examination system? Though the intention behind the question is clear, the way it was worded is grammatically incorrect. And that is an excerpt that shows where that question was found.
Okay, I'll be talking about the arguments and the literature review. Okay, firstly, we found that there are two arguments from the research. The first one is teachers' attitude should have an effect upon students' achievement and lesson involvement. Kenya 1920 says that the pedagogical relationship is at the heart of effective teaching, and changing time and social structure require that teachers have more skills in order to perform more effectively. And Fishes and Creswell 1999, they stated that interaction with the students is an essential part of the learning process. The second argument is that there is an association between learning environments and student achievement. So past learning environment studies have shown that interpersonal behavior is one of the characteristics related to student learning outcomes. This is by Beckman's 1993. So looking at the theoretical framework, there are two theories that we found. Actually, the author doesn't, the theoretical framework is not really clear. So this is what we've came up with. There are two theories that we assume that in the theoretical framework. The first one is the common approaches to studying teachers and their classrooms. This is by C. and Fisher. 2002 report three common approaches. The first approach is systematic observation. The second one is descriptive case study, which is used commonly in the past, and the other one is using student perception, which is the one that used in the recent studies. The second theory is that student perceptions are useful indicators of the classroom environment. A number of studies have found that students interact directly with the teacher in the classroom and therefore observe more of the teacher's typical behaviors than that of a first-time observer. The second thing is that student interpretation of the teacher's idiosyncrasies would be more valid compared to that of an outside observer. And use of trained observers is more expensive and time-consuming than the administration and scoring of questionnaires. And also the presence of observers could alter what generally occurs in the classroom. So here there's an excerpt from the article. The first one is from, it taken from Rosenstein, 1971, Olbeck and Hedel, 1980, and Stodolsky, 1984. So we feel it would have been more appropriate had the others provide more recent literatures to confirm the advantages of using student perception as indicators of classroom environment and teachers-student in the relationship. By looking at these figures, they are actually out of date. And looking at the curves in the literature, the following literatures provide more recent support on teachers-student in the relationship and on the advantage of using student perception as indicator of the classroom environment. So we feel that the authors should therefore have included the literature review and theoretical framework for the article. So we have Pregelman's 2004, Interpersonal Teachers' Behavior and Student Outcome, and Pregelman's 2005, 2 decades of research on teacher-student relationship in class, and Masano 2003, What Works in School, Translating Research into Action. Okay, so looking at the critical analysis of methodology, so firstly, there was no indication of methodology used, but it was clear from the results that the survey instrument used, that it was quantitative in nature, and the instrument used was a 5-point like an attitude scale, and this was designed by the authors themselves and validated by 2 educational evaluators and 4 biology teachers. So the survey instrument was measured for reliability at 0.9076 using a Cronbach alpha reliability test. However, we question the reliability of the survey instrument based on the following reasons. So the first one is looking at the survey questionnaire. Statement 26 and 28 of the questionnaire were very similar. Question 26 states that his or her exam questions have been prepared carefully, and question 28 says that exam questions have been prepared carefully. So these two are similar. However, though the statements were the same, the responses were very different. In the discussion, the authors only point out the 71.1% of students agreeing. So what about the 39.1%? So therefore, the discussion on these aspect of the data was not logical, as it was not consistent with the results. So there was no mention of how the sampling had been carried out and how the questionnaire had been administered. From online research, we found that from the years 2004-2007, there were a total of 12 government high schools and 2 private high schools. The number of the government high schools remained at 12 from 2007 to 2012, but the number of private high schools increased to 4. Our question here is, why was the other private high school not part of sample population, whereas all 12 government schools were included in the sample? Okay, if the reason was because this particular high school did not offer biology courses, then it would have been stated by the others to avoid the notion of bias in the population sampling. Okay, analysis of the findings. Overall results show that attitudes, behavior, communication and examination styles of the biology teachers range between normal and acceptable limits. This finding would have been more logical had it stated overall results such as percentage of students agreeing or disagreeing. We never questioned the logic of what the others meant by normal and acceptable limits. Results also provided a discussion frame of communication-related problems in order to improve the subject knowledge and teacher training program. This is a logic statement as it is supported by the result shown for each statement of the survey questionnaire. The results vary in terms of degree of variation of responses of the students to the attitudes, behaviors, communication and examination style of the biology teachers. The variation of responses allows for a discussion frame of communication-related problems which can be addressed for any school faced with the same problems. Analysis of the findings continued. There was no mention of how the data was analyzed. It was clear that the others dealt the total number of responses for each scale of each statement and converted it into percentage of the total number of respondents. This does not require any complicated SPSS program or other statistical tests, just basic mathematics.
I will be talking on the critical analysis of the discussion now. When we read through the discussion, we found that there was one illogical statement. And it stated, as expected, teachers' work conditions assessed by the level of job satisfaction affect teacher-student interaction. The words as expected, and we have underlined it, and assessed by the level of job satisfaction has no logic for the study. There is no data or relevant literature that is provided to support this. Therefore, the authors should have included supporting literature or data for this statement. And we found a literature which is relevant for this, and it comes from Herman, 2000, Teacher Experience and Teacher Efficacy, Relations to Student Motivation and Achievement. And it provides support for this statement. As mentioned earlier in the critical analysis of the methodology, which my colleague took, the analysis of the results for responses to statements 26 and 28 of the questionnaire was also illogical. This was because it was inconsistent with the results collected. The implications of the study. The implications that we found from the study, they were not that clear, but we came up with these ones. Teachers lacking qualities that led to effective relationships may negatively influence teacher-student interactions. Any forms of negative control should be limited since its use often teaches aggression, more physical response, produces temporary effects, and determines emotional conditioning. And lastly, examination of teacher misbehaviors provides a discussion frame of such problems in order to improve the subject knowledge and teacher training programs. All these implications were supported for within the article. Finally, the conclusion. There was no conclusion to the article except for just the implications. Had the author concluded on their findings on student perceptions of their biology teachers' attitudes and communication behavior, we would have questioned the logic of the conclusion, given that there had been no research questions or clearly stated aims for the study. For the bibliography, there was a total of 25 literature used in the article. All the reference sources we use the APA style. A total of 5 of these literature range from the years 1981 to 1991, and this is more than 15 years back. Therefore, more recent literature could have been used. And important literature which we included were those of Breckerman's and Wobbles 2004, Interpersonal Teacher Behavior and Student Outcomes, and Breckerman's and Wobbles 2005, 2 decades of research on teacher-student relationships in class, and Marzano, What Works in Schools, Translating Research into Action. Thank you. That is the end of our presentation.